So guys, pull back on track. You guys are spending a ton of time out there.
Yeah.
I'm watching at home. I'm super convinced. Heck yeah, I want to get into this kind of thing. What do you all get approached by people, right? Like, I want to go backcountry skiing. What's first? I don't want to get too avalanche yet. That's kind of we're getting there. But how do you encourage people to get into this? Do you take them? Are there resources you guide people to? Like, what's a good first step for somebody to do this safely and to really get the experience in?
I mean, absolutely. I feel like getting somebody out in a safe, controlled environment, and also out of the gate, it's important to be like, hey, if it's not good weather, we're not going to go. Like, understanding right out of the gate, decisions need to be made every step of the way.
Yeah.
And therefore, like, when you do get them out for that first time, like, the goal for me, and I'm sure for you guys, is like, have them have an experience that makes them coming back for more.
Totally.
Right. And so if it's snowing or if it's, low vis and, Avi dangerous high, like, there's a number of different variables that immediately shut things down.
Right.
And better yet, you learn how to navigate a lot of those things. So, like tomorrow morning, I'm supposed to go out early before sunrise with a friend who's a very fit person, not a great skier, and certainly doesn't know a lot about the backcountry or the avalanches. So my goal tomorrow is to literally find a walk in the woods that could progress based on decision making through those hours of the day to get on something that'll be aspirational. But if we find something along the way that says this doesn't sound good or doesn't seem good anymore, it's time to turn around. It's time to go find something else to do.
I mean, I think that's a great point. For every time there's a picture bagging that turn, there's probably 10 where you turned back because it wasn't safe for some reason. Right?
Yep.
There's conditions that are dangerous and you stay away from it.
Yeah.
But if you're somebody that doesn't have that connection, if I don't know you and you're not going to take me out, I know like White Pine Touring does things. My perspective always is go with an expert several times. I mean, it's almost like when you go hunting, you can go out in the woods and it's probably safer, but you can be unsuccessful for years. But if you go with a guide and they can teach you things, you can learn fast. That's a huge start, right? I mean,
well, but there's a reason like why, it's Kalen's got a lot of followers because she puts those pictures up there and we all aspire to do that. But everybody needs to learn how to layer, right? Like you have to be comfortable with your gear first. Then you have to be comfortable navigating your gear through, the outside. And then, you have to build up to take pictures like that, and that's not something that comes overnight safely.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and there's a lot of people romanticize the backcountry, like someone like myself, of course I'm posting the highlights of the day, maybe not so much the thought process or the things that happened underneath it. So maybe a little more clarity on that too. It'd be good to talk about, hey, we decided to turn around. We saw this, it looked beautiful. The photo would have been all time, but maybe it's not worth it, and I'm the first. I'm definitely very, very cautious in the backcountry. It's just never worth it.
Right.
It's just never worth it. I'd rather wake up the next day than be dealing with a major situation. But as you were saying, going out with someone that knows, that's how I started, was going out with people that were really, really highly trained. They knew what they were doing. And we took it really easy, very minimal. Like looking back now, that was the most exhausting day of my life. And now I'm like, that's like one of 10 laps, it's nothing compared to how we function at the current moment. But to go out with those people and just ease into it and just get a feel for it and get your feet wet and then just kind of progress from there. And getting the education, of course, is the big one behind it. I think we all jump into it, including myself, before the proper knowledge, because it is exciting and it is beautiful and it's worth it. You want that fresh snow, but you have to realize there's a lot of consequences that comes with it. So getting the education, it doesn't take that long. It doesn't take a lot of money. It doesn't take a lot of time. Getting that education, going with the right people, you're already setting yourself up for success.
And actually, to tee up Craig, and I think you hit on it, like when a lot of us started, there wasn't that much out there. Utah Avalanche Center was just starting to really forecast digitally. Probably about 10 years into my career out here, right? In the mid, 2000s. Right?
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of winging it going on. And there's a lot of people that paid the price and a lot of us were lucky in some regards. But nowadays there's so many more resources out there, from expert guides to, online resources from experts on a daily basis that can help navigate that. I'd actually like to hear from Craig a little bit of the history of this because, this is something that's really not just become it was sort of niche when it started to me.
Totally, yeah.
But all of a sudden, I mean, like, I feel like, you know, you're like the Walmart of the backcountry forecasting world, right?
Yeah, no doubt. And let's just track back for a moment or two. So education is really huge, right? A guide is really huge, a mentor. Somebody that, you know, has got a lot of solid knowledge and who's ingrained with avalanche avoidance, right? Avoiding close calls, avoiding train wrecks, avoiding at the end of the day, well, we had to piece all of these things together. That doesn't sound like a solid program to me. You know, so if that's how we are conditioned and that's how we're moving around throughout our day, there is a thin line or a thin margin of error here. Mm-hmm. So eventually the odds are going to catch up. So to come full circle, I think a lot of us were winging it for a really long time, myself included. And I know from my own personal perspective of connecting with people in the mid-'80s who I thought had experience, but really didn't. You know, yeah, they were really good skiers. They knew the resort really well. They were just getting into the backcountry. They were just getting their feet wet. But I looked up to them as mentors until one day, and it was early season, and it was similar to this. I was hiking up the ridge towards the shoulder of Baldy. And I was with my partner, and he said, right, and we had gear. We had avalanche beacons, shovels, probes. We never practiced with it, though. You know, it was like this was going to be our lucky thing that I was going to find my partner. You know, just first try ever, right? Just this miraculous thing. And I remember this guy looking at me before we were going to descend on the shoulder of Baldy. He says, "Hey, we'll want to put," and it's storming and it's blowing and it's snowing. And he says, "Hey, we're going to want to put our hoods up for this." And I'm like, "For what?" He says, "Well, if we trigger and get caught in an avalanche, you know, you're going to want this around your head and you're going to," and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Yeah, well, this might happen. There's a good chance." And I'm like, "So then why would we do it?" I had enough common sense to say something isn't right. Mm-hmm. And he kind of looked at me strange and the wind is blowing and you can hardly talk to the other person. I said, "Dude, if that's the case, I'm going to go the same way we came. Mm-hmm. And I guess I'll just see you later." You know, and he looked at me like I was just an incredible ass for even like questioning him. And I'm so glad I did. Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad I pumped the brakes and nobody got hurt and nobody got killed. But 2 drainages over off of Sunset Peak that very same day, 2 guys died in an avalanche. And like I got back to my little crewplex on Wasatch Boulevard, and my roomies were like, "Oh my God, you're okay, you're okay." And I said, "Yeah, everything's fine." "Well, you know that there was an avalanche in Big Cottonwood." And you know, I never put the pieces together, but it's like same day, same kind of terrain, same aspect elevation. It's like just by the grace of God and a little bit of common sense. Mm-hmm. You know, I was able to kind of turn the corner. And it was sort of that initial initiation. Like, wow, I got to learn a little bit more about this. And when I became a ski patrolman and got more involved in snow and the interest in that, it really helped me to kind of turn the corner. And you're absolutely right, Billy. In the 90s and early 2000s, man, we didn't have quite this big proliferation of avalanche information and knowledge. Mm-hmm. And boy, there's some amazing things that we love to hate about the internet, but education is one of the things we love about the internet.
Yeah. There's no excuse nowadays to just
not at all
not have any access to any sort of education.
Absolutely.
YouTube.
And it's an embarrassment of riches here.
Yeah.
Right? I got to say, there's a reason that the UAC, Utah Avalanche Center, is the flagship Avalanche Center, not only here locally, nationally, but globally, intergalactically. I mean, it's amazing. We have all of this information, all of this content. And when we look, this is where avalanche research, education, outreach, this is where it has all taken root. So, I mean, it is such an honor. I've got such gratitude for being part of this organization for the past 2 decades.
Well, they've done a really nice job of putting it online so you can find it. Anybody can Google this and find Know Before You Go. Take that stuff as a starting point. And I think what I'm hearing here, it's a little bit like say no to drugs. If you were like looking at this going, I'm 50-50, that probably means you shouldn't do it, right? You shouldn't go out there unless you're confident, which kind of takes me back. Okay, if somebody's beginning, one of the things I always tell people is, hey, they let you tour uphill on the resort in the mornings. Go to that, and so you can switch your bindings out without a headlamp on. Test it in the snow.
Without taking your skis off.
A lot of times, it's not even an avalanche. Like you're hiking up there, and your binding pops off, and you can't get your boot back on. You're burning calories, and your adrenaline starts pumping. There's just so many aspects to this that take a lot of practice. So one of the questions we had was like, how much training do I have to do, and how much? When I was mountain climbing, I always was told every step forward is like a contract. You can take that step back. Right? So it's always two that you're committing to.
Sure.
Like you may be able to get up there, but if you can't get back, that was not the right decision. Right? And I think that it's a slow buildup, whether it's Gardens Pass, hiking up there, if it's the resort. I took Dia, our friend, out on his first day ski touring. He had blisters this big. We didn't go that far. But gosh, if you're by yourself and you went out there, blisters could stop you in your tracks.
Totally.